Hello and welcome to lesson 42 of this B1 course with Perfectly Spoken. My name is Ellen and I will be teaching you today, and we are doing a vocabulary lesson looking at useful vocabulary, useful language for planning a day out in your town or your city. Okay, thank you for joining me. Let's get started. So, like I say, today is a vocabulary lesson and we're planning a day out. And today we will learn some adjectives to describe different places, think of activities we can do in different places, and practice making suggestions using shall, why don't we, and responding to suggestions. For example, that sounds like a good plan. Okay, so let's have a look at the first slide. Today I've chosen some cities and places that I'm familiar with. Let's see if you know them. So we're going to be describing places. Do you know these places? Here are some different places that I have visited. Do you know where they are? Have you ever visited them? Okay, so number one, this is Naples in Italy. Have you ever visited it? Do you know this place? Okay, and here we've got a photograph of a wide square. There's a big building in the background, a bird flying, and a wide square with not very many people. Unusual for Naples. Okay, number two. This is Barcelona in Spain. Do you know this place? Have you ever visited it? And the photograph shows a narrow street in the old town. Okay, and number three. This is Rome in Italy. Do you know this place? Have you ever visited it? And the photograph shows lots of ancient monuments, which is very common in Rome. They're all over the place. Okay, and number four. This is Coimbra in Portugal. Do you know this place? Have you ever visited it? And this is a quiet park in Coimbra. It's a small city or a big town, and there's a very lovely park there, and it's very quiet. No people. Okay, number five. This is Cairo in Egypt. Do you know this place? Have you ever visited it? And the photograph shows some modern buildings. Cairo is very, very old, but there is a part next to the Nile that is very modern and very new, very big new buildings. And number six, this is Varanasi in northern India. Do you know this place? Have you ever visited it? This is a busy market in Varanasi. It's very colourful and very busy. There are lots of people there. Okay, so do you know these cities? Have you ever visited them? But the most important thing that we're thinking about today is different adjectives we can use to describe these places. And as we look at the adjectives, think, how would you describe where you live? Can you use any of these adjectives to describe your town or your city? Okay, let's move to the next slide, where we are looking at matching the opposite adjective. So this is task 1A, because here we only have 6 adjectives. 3 pairs, 6 adjectives. Okay, these are taken from the photographs we just looked at. Can you match the opposite adjectives? For example, wide, does that match with busy, narrow, or modern? Wide, of course, narrow. Old or ancient in the case of Rome. It's very, very, very old. Would you match this with busy or modern? That's right, it goes with modern. And finally, peaceful. Obviously, it goes with busy. Okay, how did you get on? I'm sure you did very well. Now we're going to look at lots more adjectives and think about the opposites. Okay, so going back to the photographs. So this is Naples, and we talked about the wide square. Also, in this photograph, the building in the background is very big. And it's very peaceful. There's a bird flying in the sky. There's only one or two people in the photograph. In reality, Naples is a very noisy city, but in this photograph, in this piazza, this square, it's very peaceful. Okay, and in Barcelona we have narrow streets. It's very quiet at the moment. There aren't any people in the street at the moment. And it's very old. And Rome. Old, it's very, very, very old. I would say ancient. It's very interesting. It's full of history. Everywhere you look, there's something historical. It's very interesting. And it's very outdoor. You can see there all the monuments are outdoors. It's a city where you walk around and do lots of outdoor activities, which we'll be looking at more later on. Okay, and this is Coimbra, and this park is very peaceful. For me, it's very pretty. I like nature, I like trees, and it's very pretty. And the weather on this particular day was very warm. It was nice. It wasn't hot, like Cairo, I would say is hot, but Coimbra is warm. It's very pleasant, very nice. Okay, and in Cairo, so we have modern buildings in this photograph. Cairo is a very ancient city, but in this photograph we can see modern buildings. Personally, I think they're really ugly. In comparison to Coimbra, where it's really pretty, I think of these modern buildings as being ugly, but everybody has their own opinion. That's my opinion. Okay, and this part of the city is very expensive. It's very modern, it's very expensive. Other parts of the city are not expensive, but this part is. Okay, and finally we have Varanasi. We have, in my opinion, an exciting, busy market. And it's very noisy. There are many people shouting, selling things in the streets. It's very noisy. So, let's match the opposite adjectives like we did in task 1A, but here we have got more adjectives to match. So I'd like you to match the adjectives, and if you pause the recording on this slide, and you can match the adjectives on the right to the adjectives on the left, and then we can have a look together to see how you got on. So pause the recording now. Okay, welcome back. Very good. Let's see how you got on. So here are the answers to task 1B. Narrow, wide, busy, peaceful, old, modern. Those are 3 of them. But here are the rest of the answers. Narrow, wide, exciting, boring, interesting, ordinary, ugly, pretty, busy, peaceful, noisy, quiet, expensive, cheap, outdoor, indoor, warm, cool, and old or modern. Okay, How did you get on? I hope you did well and that the words are familiar. Maybe there are a couple of new ones there, but I'm sure generally it's quite familiar. So well done. Let's keep going. Let's move on to the next slide. I want you to think now about how you would describe where you live. Think about a city or a town that you know. Is the weather warm or is the weather cool? Is it a modern or an old place? Does it have narrow or wide streets? Is it busy or quiet on certain days or at different times of the day? Are there peaceful places you can go to? Do people mainly do indoor or outdoor activities? Okay, I'd like you to pause the recording and have a think about how you would answer those questions for a place that you know or where you live. And I will tell you about where I live when you come back. Okay, welcome back. Let's have a look together at the questions and I will tell you about a place that I know well, which is Barcelona in Spain. And I will answer these questions. So, is the weather warm or cool in Barcelona? Generally, the weather is warm. It's very rarely cool. Maybe for a month or two in the winter, but the weather is generally warm and sometimes very hot. Is it a modern or an old place? Where I live in Barcelona, it's the old town. Generally, it's an old place. It's not ancient like Rome, but it is an old place. Does it have narrow or wide streets? Again, where I live, the streets are very narrow. In more modern parts of the city, the streets are quite wide, but in the old town, the streets are narrow. Is it busy or quiet on certain days or at different times of the day? It's very busy on market days, which always happen all day Monday, Wednesday and Friday. And it's also very busy in rush hour when everybody is going to work at about 9:30 in the morning or returning home from work in the evening at about 7 o'clock. So then it's very busy. It's quiet, not in very many places. There's a park, well there are a few parks, and there are quiet places in the park, but generally there are people everywhere. And are there peaceful places you can go to? Like I say, the quiet places in the parks. And do people mainly do indoor or outdoor activities? In Barcelona, and this is part of the reason I love the city, people mainly do outdoor activities because the weather is so good. Whereas in Britain, it's much cooler and people often do indoor activities. What about where you live? Do people do outdoor or indoor activities? And that's the next part of the lesson. Let's think about different activities that we can do indoor or outdoor. Okay, for example, meeting a friend in a cafe. Going shopping. Having a picnic. Having a drink with friends in the pub. Okay, these different activities, are they indoor or outdoor activities? What do you think? Meeting a friend in a cafe? It depends, doesn't it? In the photograph, they're outdoors, but often cafes are indoors. Going shopping, what do you think? Having a picnic? Outdoor. Having a drink with friends in the pub. Okay, so here in task 2 we have got 9 different activities I'd like you to pause the recording and decide if these activities are indoor or outdoor activities. What do you think? So pause the recording on this slide, and then we'll come back and have a look together. Okay. Okay, welcome back. Let's see how you got on in this task, indoor and outdoor activities. So here are the different activities and here are the answers. Shopping, mainly it's an indoor activity, but of course if it's a market, it's an outdoor activity. So mainly indoor, but it depends. Having a picnic, that's an outdoor activity. Unusual to have a picnic in your own house or to have it indoors. Playing team sports, this is indoor and outdoor, depending on the sport. Tennis, volleyball are normally played outdoors, whereas badminton, netball, basketball are often played indoors. Okay, number 4, running. Mainly an outdoor activity. You can go running in the gym, but that's a little bit different. So it's an outdoor activity. Number 5, meeting friends in a cafe. This is an indoor and an outdoor activity. I think it depends on the weather. You have the cafe, which is indoors, but sometimes you will have chairs and tables outdoors, depending on the weather and the sunshine. Okay, and number 6, having a drink with friends in the pub, indoor. This is a very typical British activity and it's done indoors. Number 7, going to the cinema. This is indoors, although in Barcelona they do, in the summertime, they do have outdoor cinema film screenings, which is really nice, but mainly it's an indoor activity. Number 8, going for a walk, that's an outdoor activity. And number 9, listening to music. I've said it's an indoor activity, but in reality we have concerts that are outdoors. We can listen to music outdoors as well. So that's both really. Okay, so how did you get on? Did you agree with my decision, indoor or outdoor, or do you have different ideas? All correct, don't worry. Okay, and let's move on to the next slide. Okay, what activities could you do in these places? In a big city, in a city park, in a small country village, on a mountain? So I want you to pause the recording and have a think. What different activities could you do in these places? Okay, and then I'll tell you some of my ideas. Okay, so how did we get on? Let's have a look. What activities could you do in a big city? In a big city, often you can do pretty much everything. But you can definitely go shopping, you can go to the cinema, you can walk around the city, walk through the narrow streets. In a city park, what activities could you do there? Maybe you could have a picnic with your family or your friends. You could go running and relax, I think is the most important. And what could you do in a small country village? In a small country village in Britain, definitely you would have a pub. So you would go to the pub and meet with friends. And what activities could you do on a mountain? On a mountain you could go walking, running, hiking. Did you have any other ideas? Anything else that you could do in these places? Okay, let's move on now to the next slide. And here we are looking at language for making suggestions. Okay, so useful language when you're planning a day out. We've got, why don't we? Shall we? That sounds like a good idea. I'm not sure. I think blah 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 would be better. Okay, so here we've got a dialogue between two brothers, John and Peter. They live in Oxford and their sister is coming to visit at the weekend and they are deciding what to do. Okay, read the dialogue between John and Peter, and I will read it to you so you can listen to the dialogue and listen for language for making suggestions. Okay, so here we go. Peter and John plan a day out in Oxford. Peter: what shall we do when our sister Emma comes to visit? John: on Saturday, why don't we go for a walk by the river and we could meet friends in a country pub? Peter says, I'm not sure. She has never been to Oxford before. I think it would be better to take her to see the sights, like some old universities and the city centre. Should we go to the Pitt Rivers Museum? John says, that's a good idea. Why don't we have a picnic in a university park and then go to the museum in the afternoon? And Peter says, if it is sunny on Sunday, shall we go for a walk by the river, then meet friends for a drink in a country pub? John says, what a good idea. And Peter, Emma is going to love Oxford. Do you know Oxford? Have you ever been there? It's a pretty city and you can go for walks by the river. It's really lovely. Okay, so looking back at this dialogue with John and Peter, I'd like you to go through and underline any language that is used for making suggestions, and then we will have a look together. Okay, so just go through and underline any language you think that is used for making suggestions. Okay, these are the bits that I found. Do you have similar answers? What shall we do? Why don't we go? We could meet. It would be better to take. Shall we go? Why don't we have? Shall we go again? Okay, is this language familiar to you for making suggestions? I imagine it is. So I hope that you identified it and underlined it in the text. Okay, so let's look a bit more closely at this language. So, for example, what shall we do? Why don't we go? We could meet. It would be better to take. So sometimes the verb form following the structure is the infinitive, what we call the bare infinitive when there's no to, or the full infinitive. For example, it would be better to take. So bare infinitive, no to, full infinitive, to take, to go, to have. Okay, so we've got shall we and the bare infinitive. Why don't we and the bare infinitive. I think it would be better and the full infinitive. And we could and the bare infinitive. Okay, in this task I'd like you to fill the gaps with the correct verb form. Do you think it's the bare infinitive or the full infinitive? Okay, so pause the recording on this slide and complete the sentences with the correct verb form, and then we'll have a look together when you come back. So pause the recording now. Okay, welcome back. Let's see how you got on. So here are the sentences, and oh no, I've got more for you. I forgot, sorry. Here, these are not verb forms, but I'd like you to fill the gaps. So, can you remember the language that we use for agreeing or disagreeing to a suggestion? I'm not, beep. Number 2, beep, a good idea. Number 3, why beep we go to blah blah blah. And number 4, what beep we do. Okay, I'd like you to record to pause the recording again on this slide and complete the sentences. Can you remember how to complete them? Okay, welcome back. So we had task 3A and 3B there. So in total we've got 8 sentences that you had to complete. The first 4 with the correct verb form and the next 4 with a word that was missing. So let's see how you got on. Here are the answers to task 3. Why don't we go to the cinema? Number 2, should we go to a restaurant? Number 3, I think it would be better to do an indoor activity. Number 4, we could have a barbecue. Number 5, I'm not sure. Number 6, that's a good idea. Number 7, why don't we go to blah blah blah. And number 8, what shall we do? Okay, how did you get on? I'm sure you did very well. So now we're going to practice using this useful language for making suggestions and planning a day out. So we're going to look at task 4 and planning a day out in your town or city. So I want you to imagine a friend is coming to visit you and plan a day out where you live. What will you go and see? Will you do anything special? Are you going to do indoor or outdoor activities? Okay, so have a think about your town or city. If you have a friend with you, studying with you, you can plan your day out with each other, tell each other, make suggestions. You can write the dialogue if you prefer, but pause the recording now and use some of this language that we've been looking at and answer these questions. Okay? Okay, welcome back. How did you get on? Is your town, your city an exciting place to go for visitors? Where would you take people? What sights would you show them? Okay, let me tell you about Barcelona. If a friend was coming to visit me in Barcelona, what will we go and see? We would go to Sagrada Familia, which is a beautiful building. We would go shopping up a street called Passeig de Gracia, where there are loads of different shops and loads of really interesting architecture as well. And will we do anything special? We would walk around the old town and get lost in the little narrow streets in the old town. One of my favourite things to do. And we would mainly do outdoor activities. Indoor activities only if we were unlucky and it started to rain. Maybe we could go to the cinema, but mainly we would do outdoor activities and go swimming in the sea, in the swimming pool, and go to the beach if it's not too busy. Okay, I hope the day out in your city or town is very exciting as well. I'm sure it is. Okay, that's the end of today's lesson. So we've got lots of language, lots of vocabulary for planning a day out in your town or your city. And now let's just have a quick think about lesson 43, which is the next lesson with me. And in this lesson, in lesson 43, we will talk about life changes. Learn collocations with the verb get. Think about the different uses of this very useful verb get. and we'll do lots and lots of talking, so lots of practice for you. Okay, I look forward to seeing you next time, and I hope you can join me. I hope you've enjoyed today's lesson and learned some useful language. So there we go. Thank you very much, and see you next time.